Okay, then, hello, very good afternoon, and warm welcome to one and all. Uh, I'm your host, Sangeet Singh. Uh, we are again back with the second episode of this webinar series, and we are very glad to have with us Jeshi Doji Damdullah with us. With a member of Arunachal Pradesh Council of Nalanda Tradition, would like to express our heartfelt thank and gratitude to our today's speaker, Gishila, for giving your time and taking out your precious time for the same. And today, the Gishila is going to speak upon the topic comparative studies between quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy. In this, I'm going to take, I have taken a note from Universe in a Single Atom, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, if scientific analyses were conclusively to demonstrate certain claims in Buddhism to be false, then we must accept the findings of science and abandon those claims. So, with such conviction, when our spiritual guru says about Buddhism, we also feel confidence and we want to practice with conviction. Conviction. So, with this, now I would like to request one of my students, uh, Mr. Mindu Sringla, to deliver his welcome speech. Mindu Sring, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon and Tashi Dilek to everyone. Today it's a matter of great pleasure that one of the leading scholars of the Nalanda Buddhist tradition, Venerable Geshe Dorji Namdullah, is with us for online interaction. So on behalf of Arunachal Buddhist Council of the Nalanda tradition, I would like to extend my hearty welcome to Venerable Geshe Dorji Namdullah. And I also would like to welcome all the participants in this webinar. And I hope all the participants will go out through this platform with new insights and thoughts. We all are highly exciting for this intellectual engagement, and we all believe that this webinar will bring one and will provide us. So once again, I would like to extend my hearty welcome to each and everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mindula, for your wonderful welcome speech. Now, before going for the main session, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdullah. He has been the director of Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi, since 2011. And in the year 2003, the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama sent him to Cambridge University, England, for proficiency English studies. He is a visiting fellow at Girton College, Cambridge University. Geshe-la served as an interpreter and translator for His Holiness the Dalai Lama within India and abroad. He is one of the chief editors and co-author of scientific, philosophical, Buddhist, and secular books with prominent professors in the United Kingdom and United States, as well as with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His books are being used at centers, institutes all over the world to study more thoroughly on Buddhist philosophy, metaphysics, epistemology, and science. He has translated several important Buddhist philosophy texts. He wrote a number of important papers for national and international conferences held in Delhi University and so forth. The papers constitute topics such as the paradox of brain and mind and the ultimate reality according to Arya Nagarjuna. He is in the process of writing two books, one on journey into the paradox of brain and mind, and the other, what constitutes the ultimate reality, the effects of understanding the ultimate reality. Therefore, Gishila has a very profound knowledge of science and he had an interaction with world-renowned physicists and gave him the unique ability to teach Buddhist philosophy with a modern twist that many of his non-Tibetan students appreciate. So this is all about Gishila in a very brief, and we are looking forward to hear and learn from Gishila. Now, with this, I'm requesting our today's speaker, Venerable Geshe Doji Damdullah, to take over the session. Gishila, now it's over to you. Thank you.
It is a great joy. The first time I got the invitation from Geshe Tupten Kedubla to come to give a presentation to the Arunachal educated Arunachal people, I could not really contain my joy. There's a tremendous joy in my mind. And then from through Geshe Tupten Kedubla, I came to know about the many eminent teachers like Geshe Sangye Sringla and the co-host Tudamala. In fact, and my relationship with the Arunachal, the brothers and sisters, in fact, dates back to like 70 years ago when Mr. Tupten Kaldenla made a request that I come to give teachings in Itanagar, which we did twice. And the response from the Arunachal participants, the brothers and sisters, is just amazing. I really appreciate that. And so finally, it is very important for all of us that we as a human being, what marks the civilization is one's culture. And then the culture of compassion, the culture of wisdom, the culture to let others feel that this group of people is very sophisticated in thinking, in philosophy, in compassion. So this is the meaning of the civilization. This is the meaning of the culture of the particular civilization, which gives the beauty, strength to the and the fabric and the life to a civilization. So we see that the Arunachal Buddhist Council, of the Nalanda tradition. So then, this what we are learning of this compassion, the wisdom from the Nalanda tradition. This is something so unique, and in fact, I can go to the extent of saying that this is something of the treasure of the world, not only of the Buddhists, but the treasure of the world. So this is what we need to have in mind. And now there's every danger that with the advent of modern education, then the youngsters, they can be deviated, they can get strayed to the other disciplines. And when meanwhile, the reality is that there's no contradiction between the modern education, modern science, and the Buddhist philosophy, Nalanda tradition of the philosophy of emptiness, and the philosophy of compassion. While there's no contradiction, but many of the youngsters, they can easily be swayed by the modern education, and then they think that our culture is not as relevant in the today's time, which is not really the case. The reality is that while there's not only that there's no contradiction between the two cultures, the culture of the Nalanda tradition and the culture of the Western science. While there's no contradiction, there's a tremendous, we see the compatibilities between the two traditions in great extent. And today, I'm going to share with you how we can see the conversion points of convergence in a very sophisticated, new paradigm of the physics, modern physics, and the Buddhist philosophy of emptiness, as the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, and later commented upon by Nagarjuna and the great following, the number of the following scholars. Okay, this says, what are you going to do here? And then meanwhile, because that this is going to be a little technical, the quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy. And of course, I'm very happy that they are like, Geshe Tuden Ketubla and the scholars there, from Arunachal. And it's very important for the lay audience that we make the most of the erudite scholars, the presence of the erudite scholars in your own local place, which is so important. And oftentimes we tend to, there's an English expression which says that the grass is always greener on the other side. And this is something which should not happen. We must be able to make the maximum use of the scholars available in your own place, so that the youngsters will feel motivated and will be inspired and aspired to pursue through one's own culture. So this is what I'd like to share with you. And then, of course, given that we have like now, like 1 and 40 minutes more. So as Gishi Tudenketubla asked, that we can leave like half an hour for question answers. I'll be very happy to listen to all the questions that you might have, any question that you might have from Buddhism, from modern science, and so forth. It doesn't mean that I've all the answers, but what is very important that these questions must come up. These questions must come up, and it's not necessary that you should be getting a very satisfactory answer from me, but what is very important that you should not stop questioning. Your questions are so important. Okay, so with this in mind, I'm going to begin my presentation. So it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation. Yes. Okay, the next slide. Okay. So we see that all of us, if we are aware, most of us, we are all aware of the Heart Sutra, Sherab Nyingbo Heart Sutra. And meanwhile, what the similarity, the points of similarity. The first point of similarity between modern physics, particularly quantum physics. Of course, if you look at the chronological history of the modern physics, it did not really start as a physics. It started as just a simple philosophy. Started from the Socrates, then Plato, Aristotle, and then later the philosophers, then Copernicus, and so forth. And then everything started to take shape in the form of physics, more concretely as a physics, and like 300 years ago at the time of Newton. So the Newtonian physics, that today what is referred to as the classical physics, that at one point it was seen as the epitome of physics, and then over like the 200 years later, there was a quantum shift. There's a quantum shift, or in other words, there's a paradigm shift in physics, modern physics, from what is known as the Newtonian classical physics to the quantum physics and to the relativity theory of Albert Einstein. So this is what happens. And from the point of view of just looking at the two spectrums of the reality presented by the Buddhist Shakyamuni and presented by the modern physicists like Niels Bohr, then the Schrodinger, the Heisenberg, and so forth on the one hand, and of course Albert Einstein, incredibly great genius in this world, and the relativity presented by him. So when we look at that, the spectrum of the reality presented by them and the spectrum of reality presented by the Buddha Shakyamuni 250 years ago, and then the by Aranagarjuna, like the same the first century AD, about like 2000 years ago. So then we see that there's a tremendous parallel between the two. The This one point. So before we actually jump into what are the parallels between the two, is that the say the profundity of the quantum physics and the profundity of the Heart Sutra. Heart Sutra meaning the ultimate reality presented by the Buddha Shakyamuni, in multiple treatises, multiple sutras, and more precisely in Heart Sutra, we see that there's a great parallel there. And one thing which is the common between the two traditions, the ultimate reality presented in Heart Sutra and the ontological reality presented in quantum mechanics. This is about the profundity. That is that in both cases, there's a feeling of they say anybody who gets the flavor, who gets a flavor of these two concepts, you could feel that you couldn't really believe the reality being very different from how our mind perceives them. So uh, Niels Bohr, Niels Bohr, what he said is that if you study quantum physics, and if you're not shocked by the presentation made by this, or if you're not shocked by the concept of the quantum physics, you have not understood quantum physics. Next slide. Okay, this is what Niels Bohr said. If quantum physics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet. And likewise, the parallel to this, the Buddha's teachings of the ultimate reality, uh, the the Buddha Shakyamuni, after 49 days of not giving teachings, despite having attained full enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, there, then the Indra and Brahma, these the kings of the god and goddesses, they descended to make request to the Buddha. Please turn the wheel of dharma. Please give teachings. And the Buddha said what? The Buddha said that the substitute is so what the Buddha said is that the reality which I've discovered is so profound that hardly I find anybody who can fathom the depth of this. So the better it is for me to return to the woods instead of giving teaching. So to remain silent is more sensible. This is what the Buddha said. The next slide. Okay. So this is the what the Buddha said. Profound, peaceful, free of elaborations, clear-eyed, non-composite. Such is the nectar-like reality, what I found. Finding no one who can fathom this path in silence, I'll return to the words. This is what the Buddha presented pertaining to the ultimate reality or the emptiness concept. So Buddha described it as very profound. And Niels Bohr said that quantum mechanics, if it has not profoundly shocked you, you have not understood it. So this is exactly we see the parallel there, in the parallel between the two systems in the first place. Okay, so the point is that the Buddhism talks about ultimate reality and quantum mechanics. Of course, let us keep in mind that quantum mechanics is not really talking about the ultimate reality. Quantum mechanics is talking about the ontological reality. Okay, this is a very important distinction that we need to make. And Buddhism, of course, is presenting the ontological reality. And what is this ontological reality constituted of? The Buddha said is the ultimate reality. So, but the quantum mechanics, of course, they don't really talk about the ultimate reality as yet. In fact, one point, Tibet House, Delhi, we organized a conference between quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy of emptiness. And there I made a presentation on ultimate reality as to how one understands ultimate reality in Buddhist philosophy and the ontological reality in quantum physics. So there, a brilliant physicist, Indian physicist from NIAS, National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore, He, in fact, he was the chair for that particular session, and I was making presentation. And he is a hardcore physicist. He's a well-renowned physicist in India. And then what he said is that you are talking about the ultimate reality. How can we know that the reality that you're talking about, that is the ultimate? How can you say this? I was really very impressed by this question. This is a very serious question. In fact, later on, maybe towards the end of my talk, I would really encourage all of us to try to get a glimpse of what the ultimate reality is in this life. In this life, each one of us, we must try to get a glimpse of what is the ultimate reality according to the Buddha. That is the concept of shunyata, or the emptiness, tongbanyi. This is extremely important. And then oftentimes, so geshes, kembos, if as somebody has a lay audience, when you approach these geshes and kembos, please teach me emptiness. And then they may say, oh, it's a very complicated topic, it's very difficult. Okay, what I would say is that it's not about whether it's difficult or not. The point is that this is the answer to all our problems, whether you're monastic or not, that nobody wants problems. Nobody wants fear of life. And this is the final solution. The the wisdom of emptiness, or Tongpa Tawa, this is so precious that in this life, if you are really fed up with suffering, if you're really fed up with the problems of life, and then this is the solution. There is a solution there. This solution is the Tongyi Toba Sherab, or the wisdom of emptiness. This is so precious. Okay, this is one thing. Now the next is that the next parallel between these two systems. Okay, next slide. Objectivity. Okay, this is the point. Objectivity meaning that modern science emphasizes so much on the need for the experimenters, for on the need for the researchers, the experimenters, the the, the scientists, um, to be very objective in the approach. So in the quantum physics, there's a tremendous emphasis on the need to be very objective. Likewise, is the case for the Buddhist philosophy. So in fact, in this connection, this is extremely important. And the point is that objectivity meaning that we're not entitled to think about, say, we are not entitled to come up with your own impositions, superimpositions of what the reality should be like. If that is done, then we are mixing up we're blurring the objectivity. We're blurring the reality out there. We are creating our own reality according to the need of our own subjectivity. So the objectivity is to be emphasized, in order to know what the reality is. So this is very important. In this connection, I also like to share with you that the when I was in England, when I was in Cambridge, 2003, perhaps most of the students, out of natural students, most likely you are not born then, or maybe born maybe 1 or 2 years old then. Okay, I was in Cambridge. I just finished my Geshe degree, and then I was sent to Cambridge by the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for my proficiency in English, and I was a part of Girton College under Cambridge University. And as was my the what do you call it? I say the passion to inquire, interest, and passion physics. So the one of the major things that I was always the constantly in my mind is to meet with physicists. This is something so unique. In fact, just for information, that it so happened that the what is his name? Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, one of the brilliant physicists in the world. He passed away a few years ago. In fact, when I was in Cambridge, he also happened to be there. And at Girton College, there was one professor, very senior professor in mathematics, and she happened to be a student of the Stephen Hawking. So she came to know that I'm so interested in physics, and then of course I would be so happy to meet Stephen Hawking. So this was my, say, the interest that I showed, and then she said that she'll be very happy to fix a meeting with him. And of course, most of you know that he was uh, physical he was physically disabled and very challenging to speak. He could, even to speak one line, he has to just first operate on the computer, and then somebody assistant should be there to operate it, translate the signals, computer signals to the sound. So this is how he communicated. And then before my meeting with him was set, I happened to get the say a ticket to attend one of his lectures and listening to his lectures. Then I was, of course, very interesting. His lecture was very interesting, and personally, because I'm passionate about physics, and at the same time, I could see the challenge that he had to go through to talk. So then finally I gave up the idea of meeting him because that the I have some questions to ask him, and some questions can be a little complicated. And yeah, so the for example, let's say one question that you might be interested to know was that Albert Einstein, he talked a lot about lot meaning. He talked about Buddhism. At one point, what he said is that there's the in the future, if there's any religion which can go on and go in hand with science, it will be Buddhism. This is what Einstein said, and you can see that there are several of his quotes pertaining to the comparison between Buddhism and modern science. So, but if you read Stephen Hawking, you will see the mention of the other religions, but you will never see a mention of Buddhism there. So I was a little curious, given that he himself is of course, the theoretical physicist, and more inclined towards mathematics, theoretical physicist, and the Albert Einstein, and of course commented on Buddhism. I was expecting that on the Stephen Hawking also would have some comments on. And if you read his book, The Brief Arrow of Time, when you read this book, you will see the mention of many other religious traditions, but not even word of Buddhism. I was so curious about that part, and then later I gave the idea of meeting him. Okay, what is the case? The point is that I used to meet a lot of physicists while I was in Cambridge, and I met one physicist who was exceptionally bright, exceptionally bright. And but usually the philosophers and the physicists, some of them are, their nature is a little provocative. That the little provocative that the unless until what he talk, unless until what he talk is very sensible, they would not be really very entertaining. They would be very unhappy. The what he talk doesn't make sense, or there's a logical inconsistency there. This is what exactly what this the physicist was. So this physicist, at one point we met, and then he was not really happy to talk to me, seeing that I'm a religious figure. And then our common friend, he introduced both of us to each other, and then finally, out of compulsion, he started we started to chat, and then over time, we built up a great the rapport to each other, and then we started to have lots of discussions and debates. And then at one point, what he said was that, okay, let us all listen to the particular students and the others um, who are into from the modern education background. Let us all listen to what he has to say. So at one point, what he said was that in this world, only physics is education. Then I said, why? Because this is quite dramatic, the radical statement that he made. And I asked him why. Then he said that, okay, the reason that he gave is quite whether it is the logical or not, That's up to the individual to decide. But what he said, at least he gives some reasons. So what he said was that it is only physics which allows you to have a critical thinking. All others are imitation of the earlier teachers. So this is what he said. Then I said, okay, well, if this is what I think, then they listen to what the Buddha has to say. Then I quoted. Of course, I didn't say this in Tibetan. I translated this into English, which reads that the bhikshus and the wise people, just as a goldsmith tests the purity of the gold by cutting, rubbing, and burning the gold, you should also examine my words and put them to practice, not simply because you respect me. I said it, and then he remained silent for a few seconds. Then he said, oh, the Buddha must have been a great physicist. Okay, this is the point. The point is that the approach, the physics approach is very objective, and the Buddha's approach by this stanza, it just very clearly, vividly indicates the need for objectivity in the approach of the philosophy, which the Buddha taught. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is what the Buddha said. I quoted to him, and this is the approach of the Buddhism, the need for objectivity without the blind faith. In other words, the Buddhism really dissuades, the Buddha really dissuades people from following blindly. Okay, the next. Okay, now the question is, what is the ontological reality? And some of you may be wondering, in the first place, what does it mean by ontological, English word, the ontology or the ontological reality? What does it mean by that? Okay, let's say that if I look at the flower, let's say, if I look at the flower, if you look at the flower, so the flower is the object, and the mind which sees the flower, your mind which sees the flower is your subject. So the flower is the object, and your mind is the subject. So, say the emotions, anger, attachment, happiness, or sadness, all these emotions, they are the subjective experience. But these emotions, when they arise, they should arise necessarily by the combination, coming together, by the interaction of the object and the subject. So, object is there, and your mind is the subject is there. These two interact, and then depending on how you interpret the object, then the various emotions arise. For example, if you're somebody who likes flowers so much, if you say, I don't know, in Arunachal, particularly Tawang. In Tawang, the winter is quite harsh, I suppose so. The winter is harsh, and therefore you can't really imagine the natural flowers going outside. You may have greenhouse, you may plant the flowers in the greenhouses, that's fine. But otherwise, naturally, I don't suppose that you have natural flowers growing in the winter. So let's say there's suddenly, accidentally, you happen to see a bunch of flowers there, and then you are so fond of flowers. So you look at it, the flower, there's interaction happening between the object, the flower, and your mind, the subject, interaction happening, and because of your the earlier propensities or the predispositions of the liking for the flower, the interaction plus the imprint come together, and then a very pleasant feeling arises. And this, because of this, then the feeling of attachment to the flower arises. So the emotion of attachment arises. And some people I know that they are not really keen on flowers. They are not so happy. Instead of flower, they may be more happy to have an iPhone 11. So instead of on your birthday, people expect iPhone 11 or laptop and so forth gifts from your the near and dear the people. So instead of you expecting iPhone 11 as a gift, and instead of that somebody brings just a bunch of flowers on a birthday, of course you'll not be happy. So the point is that the flower is the object, and your mind is subject, and your expectation that you're going to have like iPhone 11 instead of flowers, and then when the expectation is not bad, then the unpleasant feeling arises, then the agitation, anger can arise. So the emotion of anger arises. Yeah, this is how the emotions arise through the interaction of the interplay or the interaction between the object and subject. So now, finally, the point is that we all want happiness. We all want to be free from the miseries. We all want to be free from the fears of life. For example, COVID-19. We have so much of fear of the COVID-19. I don't know what is the what is the rate of the COVID-19 positive, the number of the people being affected by this in Arunachal. I'm not too sure. Say everybody's scared of this COVID-19. Everybody's scared. So with this, what I'm saying is that this fear, if you don't want this fear, then let us keep in mind that this fear arises from the object and subject coming together, like the two hands come together, then the sound invariably arises. So the one hand symbolizing the object and the other hand symbolizing the subject, these two come together, invariably the emotions arise. So now the point is that we have to, whereas if it is the misperception of the object, misperception of the subject, misperceiving the object, misperceiving the subject, these two distorted perceptions come together, invariably the emotions arise, negative emotions, destructive emotions arise. Okay. Now, to how to get rid of the misperceptions, how to get rid of the ignorance, both from the quantum mechanics as well as from Buddhist studies point of view. In both cases, we have to introduce a counterforce. The counterforce, the ignorance, is wisdom. And the wisdom, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the discerning mind whose apprehension of the object should tally with the reality. In other words, whose apprehension of the object should tally with the object. This is what the wisdom is. So we have to know the object so well. When we misperceive the object, when we misrepresent the object, then in order to get rid of this misrepresentation, we have to know the object well. And we also know the subject well. So to know the object, knowledge of the object is known as the ontological studies or ontology. Ontology means the reality of the object. And the reality of the subject is the epistemology, the psychology. Psychology is how the mind works. And epistemology is precisely how the mind cognitively is engaged with the object. So for the object, we have the ontology. For the knowledge of the object, we talk the technical term employed is the ontology. What's the ontology of the flower? What's the ontology of the world? What's the ontology of the universe? What's the objective reality of the object? So that takes us to study what is the ontological reality. And then the subject. What is the subjective reality? So what is the subject? Well, for this, we have the psychology. Today we have cognitive science. We have the epistemology. So all these things are the study of this subject. Okay, with these things, now physics is precisely quantum physics. It is related to the ontological studies, not really with the psychological studies or the subjective studies or the cognitive thought process. Is about the ontology. So the ontology is what the modern science, particularly physics, be it quantum physics or be it the relativity theory. And whereas from Buddhist studies point of view, this forms the study of the philosophy. And whereas the study of the subject, from the modern science, we have neuroscience. From the point of view of the modern science, we have neuroscience. We also have the cognitive. We have the cognitive science. We also have the psychology, as presented by the Sigmund Freud, and other the scientists. Okay, other psychologists. In Buddhism, we have the study of the Buddhist psychology, which is so rich. Okay, so now since that we are to study the ontology and to see the parallels between the quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy, I'm not going to touch on the psychology part for the time being. If there need be, if you have questions, I'll be very happy to deal with that as well during the questions and session. Now, before we actually go deeper into the shocking experience of the quantum mechanics and the profound experience of the emptiness as presented in the Buddhist philosophy, I'd like to quickly draw your attention to the understanding of what is known as dependent origination. This is something so unique of the Buddhist philosophy. Whereas, so we talk about this thing. Okay, let's say that looking at this glass of water, if I answer what is this, most of you will say that this is water, a glass of water. And then they say like Madame Curie, the the Nobel laureate in the chemistry, she would say that this is H2O. And then particle physicists, the particle physicists would say like the particle physicists, they would say that this is a bunch of electrons, protons, neutrons. And if I ask you which is correct, all three are correct. Now, on from the first perspective point of view, from the perspective of the first view, we see that it's water. But from the perspective of the third physicist, it's just a bunch of electrons, protons, neutrons. Now, look, this is very important. What we see is water. It makes no sense when you reach the level of the electrons, protons, neutrons. For the tiniest particle of the water, we necessarily need so 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. This is required. Without that, without this combination, water makes no sense. So on that level, on the atomic level, not on the molecular level, on the atomic level, water makes no sense. In other words, on the atomic level, water is non-existent. What we say is water now is not there. With the same object, what we see as water now, looking at on the atomic level, this what we are seeing now is totally non-existent. The same object at the same time, one person sees as water, another person sees that as there's no water. Okay, for the ordinary people like us, for them, when we see that with the same object, the same time, when you look at it from a different perspective, then the water simply makes no sense. Water disappears. This is known as what is not there. Not is in English empty. The water is empty on that level. On that level, the water is empty, and you'll be shocked. Okay, so just as Niels Bohr, who said that if you study quantum physics and if you're not profoundly shocked by it, you have not understood quantum physics. So this is how shock, meaning that what you see in normal, from normal way of looking at it, when you see that this doesn't make sense on a subtler reality, which coexists with what we see now, it really shocks you. This is exactly what the Buddha said as this is a very profound experience, and with Nagarjuna said that people who first get a glimpse of this, and they have so much of fear coming out of this. So this is what it is. But for your information, some of you may feel that, oh, if the emptiness experience, if the Tongbanyi experience or the emptiness experience is very shocking and very scary, then why do we have to go there? Okay, don't worry about it. This is otherwise, it can easily mislead people. So what I would say is that the initial experience of emptiness can be quite shocking and quite scary. Initial experience, unless and until it is overwhelmingly shocking, overwhelmingly scary, I would suggest you to continue practicing this. Study, reflect, and meditate on emptiness as much as possible in this life. And with this, initially, you may begin with a tinge of a fear, a tinge of, say, the fear. And over time, with great exposure to this, with the deeper, the exposure to this for extended periods of time, then this fear will be replaced by incredibly profound tranquility. experience of tranquility, experience peace, peace which we have never experienced before. This is what we are about to experience. So therefore, I also like to give the flip side of what Niels Bohr said, as this experience is very scary, and what Nagarjuna and Arideva said, this experience emptiness is very scary, they initially, and then you realize that this experience is so profound, and this is so priceless, because you realize that this experience alone has a capacity to get rid of all our miseries, all our fears. Okay, this is very important. So before we delve into this concept of emptiness, the concept of quantum mechanics, before we delve into this, I like to show you the flip side. For example, like say the two sides of the same coin, the head and the tail. Likewise, emptiness, while it's quite scary on the one side, on the other side, the other side, there's dependent origination. There is dependent origination. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. Let us not forget this. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. On one side is emptiness, but on the other side is dependent origination. That is very important. And the dependent origination, His Holiness the Dalai Lama always describes that either on 2 levels or 3 levels. So if you study the 3 levels, then the 2 levels automatically you will come to know about it. So the 3 levels of dependent origination, just for information, to make sure that your understanding of emptiness does not fall into nihilism. Because oftentimes people, when they study the concept of emptiness, they easily fall prey to nihilism, and then they tend to deny, reject all the functional realities of the world. Okay. The first level of dependent origination is known as dependent origination of causation, where all the results that we see around the whole universe came into being by dependence on the previous causes. So this is known as dependent origination of causation. And in other words, there's no composite phenomenon which does not arise independent. Okay, there's no composite phenomenon which exists independent of the earlier cause conditions. In other words, all the composite phenomena should necessarily arise by dependence on the previous causes and conditions. This is number one. So the knowing this has a great relevance to our, say, being respectful for the law of karma. Law of karma is the operation of the causation, cause of a relationship. One very precise form of cause and effect is referred to as the law of karma. So law of karma becomes a subset of the dependent origination of causation. Number one. Then number two is dependent origination of whole and parts. For example, what we said of this water. What is this water? Well, this water is made of H2O, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. If we split the hydrogen and oxygen, and hydrogen consists of the proton and 1 neutron. It's 1 neutron and 1 electron. And oxygen, 16 protons and 16 electrons. So when you split these elementary particles apart, then the water makes no sense. So the water as a whole comes into being by dependence on its parts. So that is, independent of these parts, there's no water there as a whole. This is known as the dependent origination of the whole and the parts. Number two. Then number three is dependent origination of mere mental destination. The third one is very important, and for us to understand what emptiness is, it is indispensable. It is indispensable for us to know the third level of dependent origination. So this is where we have to focus on, and whether or not the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and the Buddhist philosophy of emptiness, these two are parallel. These two are parallel, or these two converge, diverge. To what extent they converge, it all depends on your understanding of the third level of dependent origination. So this third level of dependent origination, and then of course you have to study the quantum mechanics a little bit, study that, and then you have to you should be the judge to see where the two of them fit each other, to what level, 100%, that they tally, or 80% tally, 50%, 20%. That's up to somebody, the person who is exposed to both the traditions well. That person is the legitimate person to decide uh, to what degree two of them, two of these, the views, they tally. Okay, next. This is extremely important. Extremely important. And first, I would move to the next slide. Okay, this is first what I'd like to share with you. And otherwise, so sorry. Yeah, we can switch to the first one, earlier slide. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is extremely important. So, and the many of the intelligent, very smart people, if they don't meet smart people, meaning people who are exposed to the modern physics, quantum physics, and relativity theory, if they happen to meet with the Buddhist philosophy of Buddhist philosophy of emptiness, then no doubt they will have a tremendous respect surging in themselves towards the Buddha's teachings. In fact, the same Tibet House, we launched two important programs. One, which was which was blessed and launched by His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself, which is known as Nalanda Master's Course. 4 years course known as Nalanda Master's Course, where anybody can take part in this. Anybody, whether you're Buddhist or non-Buddhist, it doesn't matter. Whether you are girl or boy, it doesn't matter. Whether you're monastic or non-monastic, it doesn't matter. Anybody, or whether you have done your BA, the bachelor's or not, it doesn't matter. Anybody who is interested to know the Buddhist philosophy, you are most welcome to do this course. So, then the say when somebody with the modern education, when they meet with this Nalanda tradition of the philosophy, traditional philosophy, then they say there's no way other than to be mesmerized by the amount of the profundity of this concept of the Buddhism, what is taught in Heart Sutra. So microcosm and a macrocosm. And of course, if you read Heart Sutra, you will not find these words there. But the concepts, when you look at it, we see that the Newton physics, when you find a paradigm shift from Newtonian physics to the modern physics, which is quantum physics and relativity theory, you see that the many of the physicists, they said, of course, while they respect Albert Einstein greatly, they say that the Albert Einstein wasted half of his life. The second half of his life, he wasted to look for a unified field theory. Okay. So what they are saying is that the two major theories, two major the branches of physics that we have today, the quantum physics and the relativity theory today. Of course, both of them with some ground on Newtonian physics, but this is the newly developed theories over the last 100 years. So quantum physics, when you study quantum physics, we see that it's all about the micro world. It's about how the electrons behave, how the protons behave. So how the micro world operates. This is quantum mechanics, quantum physics. And whereas the relativity theory is about how the universe behaves, how the solar system behaves, how the Big Bang theory started, and how from the Big Bang, then all the universe, they evolved, the space and time came out of the singularity. So this is being all studied under the theory of relativity. So in other words, we see that the quantum physics, it touches the micro world, and the relativity theory touches the macro world. And the physicists, they are trying to build a bridge between the two. And of course, today, we do find the quantum physics, and the showing the behavior, the quantum behaviors on the macro objects. Macro objects is not a universe like this, but on say the tangible solid objects that we. But these are all artificially designed, not what is visibly seen in the natural world. Okay, keeping that aside, we see that quantum physics deals with the micro world, and the relativity theory deals with the macro world, and trying to bridge the two, and to look for a unified theory, the physical theory. This was the what is not really happening. Okay, so now if you parallel to this, if you look at the Buddhist philosophy presented in Heart Sutra and other sutras, then we see that there's a mention of the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. Conventional truth, Kuzup Demba, ultimate truth, Tundam Demba. So in a loose sense, what I would say is that the conventional truth, it explains the conventional world, or what we can call as the macro world, which are accessible to the people like us. Whereas the ultimate truth is that this truth which coexists with this conventional truth, but which is not accessible to people like us, unless until you're so well versed, you spend a lot of time in the study, reflection, and meditation on the ultimate truth, that is emptiness. So one truth which talks about the ultimate, which talks of very subtle reality or the macro world, and the other one is conventional truth, which talks about the macro world. So we see that there's a great parallel there, and now the discrepancy or the divergence between the two traditions is that with the contemporary physics, quantum physics talking about the macro world, and the relativity theory talking about the macro world, these two we cannot bridge the two. This is the problem. We cannot bridge the two. So, whereas in the Buddhist philosophy, conventional truth dealing with the macro world and the ultimate truth dealing with the micro world, these two not only we can bridge the two, these two are seen to coexist. This is so important. Just as a little digression, last year, the early part of last year, almost like 2 years ago, when I was in Israel, there's one of renowned neuroscientist, Professor Eden Sigif, Idan Sigif, and he organized a conference on consciousness from the neuroscience point of view, then the Western psychology point of view, and the Buddhist psychology point of view. He convenes a conference, and the neuroscientists during the presentation, and they're trying to speak of the mind, the functions of mind reduced to the brain, and then unlike other conferences where I've been attending, so conference there in Israel, that is something I really, really appreciate, because there just the speaking to comply with somebody, that is not really being done. There are being very direct head-on debates happening. That's something I really appreciate. This is a tradition which in the monastery universities like Sarah, Debung, Gandan, and also in Shetas, the very rigorous debates, that similar kind as what was happening then. So there what happened was that in that conference, one neuroscientist was making a presentation of the workings of the mind, and they explained from the neurons, from the point of view of the workings of neurons. And then a question just popped up. The question was on the free will. Where's the free will? If you reduce the workings of the brain, workings of the mind, on the workings of the brain, then where's the free will? So the neuroscientist was trying to explain the free will on the basis of the brains, on the basis of the tangible brain. So tangible brain is very deterministic in nature. Very deterministic in nature. Determinism and free will There's the complication there. There's a discrepancy there. There is a conflict there between the determinism and the free will. While the free will is what operates the whole world, the economy, environment, then the domestic, say, the interactions, and the government, and the business, everything is operating on a basis of the free will. And if you discount the concept of free will, then it contradicts with the operations of the world. If you include the free will, then you cannot explain it on the basis of the workings of the brain, purely on the basis of the neuroscience. So the neuroscientists, they were, they were trying to reduce the workings of the mind. They were seeking, they were seeking reductionist approach, which means that they just break them down into the neurons and the neurotransmitters, and then the ions, and then the receptors, and the receptors into the molecules. When you break them down, when you approach in the reductionist way, then you cannot locate where the free will is. This was the greatest of the contradiction that they could not address. Then during the question answer, a question session, the comment session, and then I raised my hand. And I said that you will never be able to resolve this problem about the free will if you approach as a reductionist approach. If this is happening, you will never be able to resolve the free will. To resolve the free will concept, the issue, free will issue, you must know the two truths presented by Arya Nagarjuna. I said it, then I explained how. On the free will has to be explained on the conventional level. When you look for the reductionist approach, in a way you are looking for this akin to the ultimate analysis. You are approaching through a system which is akin to the ultimate analysis. When you go into ultimate analysis, then what you see in the conventional truth cannot be found, like the water. The water on the atomic level, on the reductionist atomic level, you will never find the water. So the concept of free will dissolve when you reach to this analysis. So this is what I said, and then I said, what is the ultimate reality, ultimate truth? So I just put it in a very simple line. I said that this I'm going to share with you, but then for you to really get it, you have to study extensively on this concept. So the ultimate truth, emptiness or the ultimate truth in Buddhism, emptiness of objectivity is the emptiness of objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object. I just put it in one line and left it there. I said that without understanding this, there's no way by which you can resolve the issue of the free will. Just by approaching the neuroscience approach, you will never be able to resolve this issue. And there's the professor, Professor Idan the Sigif. He is a very renowned neuroscientist in the world. And then later on, what I discovered was that after the meeting, after conference, I was just having some question answers with chat with some scientists, and then this chief meaning the main host of this conference, he was asking somebody, what is this line which he said, emptiness of objectivity of the object is the objective of the object. He was really thrilled by this, and then the other person approached me, and I said it again because he's such a renowned neuroscientist. And so out of respect, I'm present. And he was like a small child. He was memorizing this. He was so thrilled by this line. Emptiness or objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object. So this is something which is extremely profound. The harmony between the two truths. Okay, the next slide, sorry. Okay, Heart Sutra. In fact, most of us, we must have been saying this every time we recite the Heart Sutra. These four lines are there. Suk tongba wo tongba ni suso. Suleja tongba ni shemai, tongba ni lenja sushemai no. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. Okay, this is the Heart Sutra in the first place. Heart Sutra is seen as the essence of all the teachings of the Buddha. It is heart of all the teachings of Buddha. Within this Heart Sutra, these four lines form the heart of the Heart Sutra. So I would suggest that all of us try to get a glimpse of these four lines, the meanings of these four lines, and to to extract the greatest meaning out of one's life. This is so precious. If you know this meaning, and you then do a comparative study with the modern science, you see that in the first place, you see that wow, our culture is so profound. Number one, and in fact, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like I think about like 30, 40 years ago, when His Holiness was giving a teaching on emptiness, it was attended to by one of the most renowned quantum physicists of India, Professor Rajaraman. He was there, and then after the teaching, he went to His Holiness and told His Holiness that quantum physics is just as old as like 100 years. But actually, this quantum physics was already taught like 2000 years ago by the Buddha, by Aranagarjuna. What you taught in this the public teaching is exactly the quantum physics. So we think that this is a new developed concept, but actually it was already taught by the Buddha Shakyamuni and Aranagarjuna like 2,500 years ago. This is exactly the case. So this is so important. Form is empty, empty is form. Form is empty. Form is empty. What we see is a physical form. What we see is a physical form. When you go towards the object, this physical form is empty. Quantum physics, what we see is the reality now, how how the world operates, how how the waves, for example, let's say okay, how the particles they behave as particles, sometimes behave as they behave as wave. All these, when we what we what we see, what we perceive, if you go into to inquire the ontology, then we see that what we see is not really the reality. Quantum physics also says the same thing. It is empty there. While it is empty there, it is really nothing. The nihilism, there's nothing really there. No. What we say emptiness is actually the physical form. Physical form, same object and subject. Now, the best thing, just for information, is that the example of, let's say, example of watching a movie in a movie theater, a big movie theater. When you are watching a movie here, the screen is here. You are watching the movie on the screen. Movie is on the screen. But where is the movie coming from? It's not coming from the screen. It's coming from the projector. And the projector is behind you. So the movie is on the screen, but it's not from the screen. The screen is the metaphor for the object, and the projector is the metaphor for the subject. So the movie is on the screen, on the object, not from the object. It's from the subject, from the projector, which is the metaphor for the subject. Likewise, so therefore the form is empty. What you see as a form is not coming from the object. It is empty from the object. But it is really empty is it really empty? It's not existent? No. What is empty from the object means it exists from this subject. So what is empty? The second line says emptiness is form. What is empty from the object exists as a form from the subject. From the subject, it exists as a form. What is seen as form from the subject? The first line says, what is seen as form from the subject, it is empty from the object. Form is empty. What is seen as the form from the subject is empty from the object. What is seen as empty from the object, it exists as a form from the subject. So this is a very profound experience. Whereas when we see the small children, when they watch the movie, a ghost movie, very scary ghost movie, Then they're so scared. They think that the ghost is actually on the screen. No, it's not from the screen. It's not really there on the screen. They cover their head, thinking that this goes there on the screen. No, it's all coming from the projector. It's not from the screen. But a small child sees that as coming from the screen. So likewise, there's a because of which they have the fear. For us, we are like small children. Same form is empty. What we see is a form. What we see as COVID-19. What we see as happiness. What we see as the beautiful mountains of the Tawang, beautiful mountains, forests, clean air of Tawang. What is seen by our subject is empty from the object. What is seen from the empty from the object, it exists as a beautiful form to the subject. Emptiness is form. So these two things, what is seen from the object empty, from the subject there's a form there. These two coexist. Coexist. For example, say the water, you see as water, and Albert Einstein sees this as electrons, protons, neutrons, no water. So what Albert Einstein sees this as no water, what you say is water, these two coexist. These two are not two dichotomous objects, but these two coexist. So form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. So this is a Heart Sutra. It's so important. So from this we see that form is empty. Form is empty. When you say form is empty, this is what quantum mechanics would say, that what we see as things are so independent, they are actually empty of independence. Observed makes sense only by dependence on the observer. Independent of the observer, observed is just empty. Okay, this form is empty. So this presentation of Heart Sutra very much tallies with that of the quantum mechanics. Now the difference is quantum mechanics does not go the other way. Emptiness is form. This is what is lacking in quantum mechanics. This is what the Buddhism emphasizes so much. So what's the benefit of that? Form is empty. When we see the form is empty, it is like seeing in the dream, the ghost is chasing you. There's so much of fear in you because you believe the dream ghost as a real ghost. So when you see that, when you don't want the fear, how to get rid of this fear? Come out of the dream. Wake up, come out of the dream. You come out of the dream and you see that this dream ghost is empty as a real ghost. When you realize this, your fear dissolves. So form is empty. So the Buddha taught the form is empty from objective side, so that all our fears will dissolve. The fear of COVID-19, the fear of the loss of near and dear ones, the fear of your sickness, aging, death, and so all these fears will dissolve. Then the second line. So from this point of view, form is empty. This is what you also see in a way presented in quantum mechanics as well. But second line is missing in the quantum mechanics. Emptiness is form. So the second line helps us that, okay, what we see is empty of objective existence. So which means that they are non-existent? No. They do exist in a different way. They do exist subjectively. So emptiness, what we see as emptiness from the object, they exist subjectively. So from the object, emptiness is subjectively, it is form. Emptiness is form. What is the benefit of this? The benefit of this is that on the subjective level, everything is happening. Cause and effect is happening. Form is there. Everything is operating on the subjective level. In other words, on the subjective level, say the dependent origination is operating. Emptiness is form. This is the dependent origination. Dependent origination is operating. Because the dependent origination is operating, because it is operating, dependent origination is operating. So by dependence on being kind towards others, your happiness will be created. By dependence on harming others, your miseries will happen. So by understanding the second line, you respect the law of dependent origination, on the basis of which then your compassion grows. So the first line removes your fear. The second line increases compassion, thus increases your happiness. So the first line removes your fear, and second line gives you the infinite happiness. So all what we are seeking, everyone, whether you're Buddhist or non-Buddhist, whether you're girl or girl or boy, whether you're young, old, educated, uneducated, rich, poor, whether you're believer or non-believer, everybody is seeking two things: to get rid of all the fears of life, and to have the maximum happiness. Two things. And if you want to get rid of all the miseries of life or the fears of life, you have to understand the first line. Form is empty. This is the best remedy to overcome all your fears of life. And it doesn't matter whether you're Buddhist or non-Buddhist. And second line, emptiness is form. If you know the second line, your compassion will grow and your happiness will grow. Everybody seeks happiness. If you want to expand your happiness exponentially, then to know the second line, to experience the second line, this is indispensably required. Emptiness of form. So therefore, this is not only for the Buddhists. This is not only for the followers of the Buddha. This is for everybody who seeks to get rid of the fears of life and to have the happiness. Okay, next slide. Okay, what we have here, if you look at the picture, you will see that the second picture, it is a double slit experiment. There's a typo there, double slit experiment. Double slit experiment. And then on the left side, we have His Holiness Dalai Lama with Professor Anton Zeilinger. And Professor Anton Zeilinger, he is greatest, one of the greatest quantum physicists in the world today. In fact, I learned from, of course, I met Professor Anton Zeilinger. We had, quite the extensive the interactions, and of course, I have a lot of questions on quantum mechanics. I asked him, and he was so happy. He was not expecting a Buddhist monk asking quantum questions on quantum mechanics. So he was so happy. When I met him, I was in my late 30s, and he was already in like I think late 70s. I think there was a gap. There's a gap of 40 years between us, and he was so happy. Okay, so what I'm saying is that for the quantum mechanics studies, research, the double slit experiment equipment. This equipment I learned from one very senior Indian quantum physicist when we were having one conference in NIAS, National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore. What he told me was that in this world, there are only 7 equipments for the double slit experiment. Only 7 equipments in the world. I couldn't really believe. And he said, yes, that's true. So I asked him, then there's so many quantum physicists in the world. Even in one country, there are like almost like 200 nations in the world. And then each country must have like at least the 300, 400, 500 quantum physicists. And then multiplied by like, say, 200 countries. There are like thousands of quantum physicists. How do they do the research? So they can't really do for the double slit experiment, they can't really have the opportunity to do this. He said, that's very true. So what we do is that he himself was a quantum physicist. So these people who have the equipment, the 7 equipments, they do the experiments, and then they publish the experiments. And then the other quantum physicists, they try to use these data they published by the experimental physicists. Okay, so he was actually operating one of those 7 double slit experiment equipments. Okay, so let's see. So the quantum physics says observer effect and double slit experiment, and quantum physics saying that independent observer, in the Buddhist parlance, we talk about the conceptual mind or the subject. Independent of the observer, there's no observed. And in the Buddhist parlance, independent of the subject, there's no object. So emptiness of objectivity is the objectivity of the object. This says the meaning. The next. Okay. So the subjectivity that we're talking about, subjectivity in Buddhism, say the quantum mechanics one. Quantum mechanics talks about the subjectivity of the observer-based fact, and in Buddhism, subjectivity is a language. The quantum physics would use the word observer. In Buddhism, we use the word subjectivity, or we use the word, say, the conceptual mind, the mind. Okay, so to understand the subjectivity, there are various levels of subjectivity. So one is the subjectivity, how the quantum physics would say the emptiness of observed, emptiness of the observed, emptiness of the observed object independent of the observer. And in Buddhist, the parlance, emptiness of externality, emptiness of externality, what is external is not real from the point of view of the Chittamatra school. And the emptiness of objectivity, like the movie projector and the screen, well, there's nothing from the screen, it's all coming from the projector, it's all coming from the subject. This is from the point of view of the Prasangika Madhyamika. Next slide. Okay, this is an interesting topic. Say the Big Bang happened 15 billion years ago. 15 billion years ago, if you look at the extreme left side, you see the white, they say the ball like white cloud. So that is the Big Bang. Big Bang, with starting the trigger from this, what they call as, what the quantum physics would call as the singularity. And then to the extreme right, we see the various world systems, galaxies, and so forth. This is today. So in between these two is a gap of 15 billion years ago. This is how the universe evolved. Time and space evolved from the singularity of the Big Bang. Okay, so what is there at the time of singularity? This is a very interesting question. What is the time of there at the singularity of the, in other words, what's the fabric? What is the fun fabric? What is the, say, the initial trigger of the universe? What is that substance which gives rise to all these the parts of the universe? The quantum physicists would call it as a quantum vacuum. There's a quantum vacuum there. That is the substrate of the whole universe. Whereas in Buddhism, we speak about the whole universe. They came into being from the emptiness. So emptiness is like the substrate for the whole universe. And quantum mechanics would say the quantum vacuum. Vacuum means empty, quantum vacuum. But quantum vacuum doesn't mean nothingness according to the quantum physicists. They have their own speculations. They have their own the explanation. Quantum mechanics, the quantum vacuum is not a vacuum. It's not an empty. It's not nothingness. But it has a full. It has innumerable potentialities. That is what they speak of. Okay, the next. Okay, fine. The next. Okay, this is another new development in quantum mechanics. Dependent origination versus quantum entanglement, non-locality and teleportation. Quantum entanglement, this is not a new concept, but the quantum teleportation, teleportation concept, which is relatively new concept. And on this basis, so this concept where, say, Einstein was not too happy about this quantum entanglement. He calls that the spooky action at a distance. This is what Einstein was not too happy. So this is where, although Albert Einstein, he did contribute a lot to quantum mechanics, but with one particular concept of quantum mechanics, this is about the quantum entanglement. The Einstein was not too happy, or in other words, quantum the randomness concept in quantum mechanics, Einstein was not happy. So Einstein was the spooky action distance. For example, two unrelated electrons ejected from the same same projector, the projector in the two opposite directions. Then these two electrons, on the basis of what you observe, one electron, you can see the behavior of the other electron, even though these two are not connected by any means. So now this concept, today they make it into say the utility purpose. They've designed the machineries on the basis of this concept, the quantum teleportation. So where, for example, say in fact, one of the pioneers of this is Professor Nicholas Gisin, from the quantum physicist from Switzerland. So we invited him to give a talk here in Tibet House, and then so he gave a talk on this, and then he's one of the pioneers of this concept. And then he said that he already in fact designed what do you call it, say a gadget to be the for commercial purpose. And what's the purpose of that is that if I'm connected with you, I'm connected at the moment. I say I'm using my emails, Facebook, and the Instagram. I use this, and then the people who own the server, who own the internet, the service, they everything is in the hand. All my secrets in the emails, everything is in their hand. In fact, they have the password. But of course, there are the rules regulations where they are not entitled to share the password with any other people. So these rules regulations are there. But then they know they all the secrets there, it is in their hands. Okay. But with the quantum teleportation, nobody can have your password. You and your friend, for example, me and you, with this equipment. So I'm operating my computer here, you're operating your computer there. If we employ this gadget, which runs on the principle of quantum teleportation, I press my password, and then nobody knows this password, and then I can share with you. And so things like the communication happening between two of us, which nobody else has any access to. So this is a benefit of the quantum teleportation in the utility with the utility purpose. Okay, the next. Okay, now the concept of emptiness. This is quite profound, and then to study this, we have to know at least like these 5 layers of emptiness, and its concept, and to the permanent. And of course, I will not get time. The main concept is that there you see the dependency there, dependent origin. If you look at the photograph, you see that there are all these wheels there. All these wheels are connected to each other. And if I ask you which wheel is the most important one, if the stopping of which will stop all the other the wheels, then you see that no, there's no one wheel. They're all connected. They're all connected. Any wheel stops, all the wheels will stop. Okay, this is how everything is connected. So this is the display of the understanding of empty, the dependent origination, or the other side, the flip side of which is emptiness. Dependent origination means the emptiness of independence. There's no independent existence. Everything is dependent on each other. So these are the 5 layers. I don't want to go into detail. The next. Okay, this is the line which mesmerized and thrilled, made the neuroscientists, Israeli neuroscientists, a very senior neuroscientist, a very renowned also, thrilled by this line. Emptiness of objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object. This is the ultimate reality according to Aranyagārjuna, according to Buddha Shakyamuni, according to Aranyagārjuna. Okay, the next stanza. Oh, sorry, the next slide. So this is where most of you have paid, to pilgrimage to the site, Nalanda, the great storehouse of the treasure of the humanity, the Nalanda tradition, which lasts for about little over 1 millennia. Unfortunately, it was great loss of one of the greatest treasures of the world. Incredible great loss. Okay, next. Okay, so if you look at this is like a summary meaning not really summary from related to the relativity theory, whereas in physics, relativity theory and quantum mechanics have to be treated as two separate non-convergible the theories, but in Buddhism, relativity theory and the theory of the theory of the emptiness, these two are not as the dichotomous. These two are seen as the two compatible theories. So here, this is more like not really development as such, but the different the views. The first one, the Newton. For Newton, is a relativity of space. And then Einstein came. Then Einstein spoke about the relativity of space and time. And of course, the Buddha or Nagarjuna, like 2,500 years ago, way before two of them already spoke about the relative of space, time, and the mind. This is something very interesting. The next. Okay, so this why I brought these Christian monks studying geometry and astronomy is because that the need for us, the way the Buddha they advised his followers to maintain a very open mind, not to follow, uh, not to follow blindly, not to not to have blind faith. So look at this. Even the brilliant Christian monks, they made a great contribution to modern science, like uh, the, the one who discovered the the genetic science, who who first studied the genetic science was a Christian monk. So likewise here, Christian monks studying geometry and astronomy. So in fact, what I'm saying here is that the need for us to maintain an open mind in order to know the reality rather than relying on the blind faith. Okay, next. Okay, I think we'll stop here. Next. Okay, this is the very important point that His Holiness the Dalai Lama, today we see that His Holiness is serving as an incredibly great bridge between the modern science and the Buddhist philosophy, and and serving as bridge between the two, and thus evolving into the concept of the universal ethics for the world, for the betterment of the world. This is so important. The the important phenomena which is happening. The next. Okay, next. Okay, this stanza, I'm sure some of you are aware of. This is from Bodhisattva Shantideva. Bodhisattva Shantideva in his Chunjuk, a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, where he said that where would I possibly find enough leather with which to cover the surface of the earth? Yet wearing leather just to cover the soles of my feet is equivalent to covering the entire earth with it. Saying that if you cover the two tiny feet with the pieces of leather, then that suffices to cover the entire earth with the leather. Likewise, to deal with all our problems related to the world, just get rid of your misery, get rid of your, say, the problems inside, self-grasping ignorance, misperception, ignorance inside, and the selfishness, self-centered attitude. Remove these two by seeing the emptiness, by seeing the emptiness concept, where the Buddha taught form is empty. Know this concept, and then drive this concept with the Atisharish mind, practice of compassion. These two combined together will solve all our problems. Next. 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 Okay, next. This is, I like to conclude the talk by this, the quote from Albert Einstein. We see that the picture, the first one is the Albert Einstein with Rabindranath Tagore, both of them Nobel laureates, one in physics and one in literature. And the other one is Albert Einstein giving his address, Nobel address over his having received the Nobel Prize. So what is said is, I like to conclude with this. So in fact, quantum mechanics, and particularly the Buddhist philosophy of the emptiness. If you ask the Buddha Shakyamuni, what's the purpose of this? Buddha Shakyamuni will rightly say the same thing which Einstein said here. So I'm just going, before I read this, I'd like to simply give you the summary, the synopsis of what Einstein said here. Okay, so what he said is that the human beings, we are suffering because of our optical illusion, because of our ignorance. And this ignorance blinds us from seeing the reality, broader reality, and thus make us very selfish to extend our love and affection towards only a small circle of the beings, and the rest we see as enemies. This creates the chaos, the tyranny, corruption, terrorism. All these problems arise because of our optical illusion. Optical illusion, the Buddha refers to as the ignorance, and Einstein used the word optical illusion. And through this optical illusion, then the selfishness arises. The Buddha said that with this wisdom to see the reality, Your other cherished mind, bodhicitta, must be expanded. Okay, if you read this, a human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself or herself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. The next. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be, what should we do now? To get rid of the optical illusion, to get rid of this ignorance and expand the circle of love and affection. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. This is exactly the teaching of the Buddha. So therefore, this is beauty. So where we study the Buddhist philosophy, and there is a soteriological purpose, the purpose of the happiness for the whole world. Okay, yes, the next. Okay, this gives us a hope that with this, finally, the real awakening, the real treasure of the happiness is within us, which Aranyagarjan said it. I bow down, I bow to the Dharma Dhatu, which means the treasure, the gold inside us, the gold when mixed with the mud. You don't see the gold glowing. We think that it's just mud there. So, but there's gold there. In the eyes of the gold experts, there's gold there. In the eyes of ordinary people, there's no gold. It's just the mud there. So how do you recite? How do you know that? Then the gold expert will tell us to remove the mud. Every time you remove the mud, the gold will start to glow. Then you'll realize that, yes, there's a gold within me. Each one of us, whether you're Buddhist or not, it doesn't matter. Whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. We all have the goal of the Dharma Dhatu, which is the goal of the enlightenment within us, which resides in every sentient being. When not aware of it, they circle through the three realms. Due to just the being purified, what is such samsara's cause? This very purity is that nirvana. Likewise, enlightenment is just this. The next. Okay, some suggested readings. Universe and single atom, sleeping, dreaming, and dying, gentle bridges, destructive emotions, in search of memory, beyond religions. Okay, the next. Thank you. Okay, so so now the what I would say is that, yep, in the end we'll do some question answers. I'll be very happy, and I'll be also happy to leave this PowerPoint presentation to Geshe Tudenkadula, and anybody who's interested, you can take this. You can take a copy from Geshe Tudenkadula. Okay, thank you, each and every one of you. Tujana Geshe-la, Geshe Tudenkadula, Tujana.
Thank you, Geshila, for your wonderful session. It was very insightful, and thanks for sharing your research findings with us. And you have shared lots of things which are like new to us, like quantum vacuum, then non-locality and teleportation. We have learned so many new things, and one of the things, like the quote, if the quantum mechanic hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it. It really stimulated me, and I'm very willing to learn more about quantum physics and very curious about this. You have talked about the parallelism between East and West, where we talked about matters and mind. So we are very thankful to you. And dear participants, now we are open for the question and answering. If you have any doubts, queries, you can ask to Geshila. Thank you. Hello. Geshila, we are not able to like hear you. I think you're, but you have to unmute here.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you
Yes,
hear
yes.
me? Okay, sorry. In fact, before I say anything, let me first express my deep thank to Tubden Omula from Europe for co-hosting, making Geshe Tubden Kedula and Sangye against Sangye Seringla and all others feel very comfortable that if something goes wrong from their side, then to them is then Europe to tackle everything. Okay, thank you so much for being there to assist. Geshe to then Ketubla and get Sangye Seringla. Okay, any question that you might have, please feel free to bring them up. As I told you before, don't feel hesitant. Just it doesn't mean that I've all the answers. The point is that these questions must not be restrained. We must bring up these questions. That's very important. Okay, any questions?
Sorry, I believe there is a question in chat by Dr.
Yeah.
Tashi Punso, and I don't know why. I can read it because it seems that probably it was written with a purpose in the chat. So it says, despite similarities, it says Tashi Delet Geshila, despite similarities between science and Buddhism in methodological aspects, it seems subjectivity is present significantly more when one is on the path to liberation because it's an experiential journey. On the other hand, in science, they can keep subjectivity silent and study how variables operate in a given setting, a choice of a particular subjectivity. So it appears fundamentally the goal of a physicist and a Buddhist practitioner are not immediately similar. Do you think in Einstein's theory or Newton's theory are empty of compassion or bodhicitta? If objectivity or physicists and scientists is not based on philosophical choices or evaluation, wouldn't it be incomplete from Buddhist point of view?
Okay, this is a very good question, Dr. Tashi Pinzola. This is a very good question, and thank you to the Umala for kindly reading this for us. Thank you so much. This is a very serious question. Thank you so much. Okay, the say, okay, let me respond to this on two levels, just on a very surface level and the deeper level. On a surface level, okay, Buddhism talks about the subjectivity, which means empty of objectivity. And then the modern science talks about the objectivity, need to be objective. So on that level, it's a very cursory surface level. There's a contradiction there, not just a contradiction. On the surface level, it's not just a contradiction. These two are like two dichotomous views. One says that it's pure subjectivity, other says that pure objectivity. Okay, this is on the surface level. So if you look at things on that level, then we can't really see the harmony between the two. This is very true. And even to get to that level, the person should be exposed to both the traditions to some extent. One. Then going on the deeper level, then the deeper level, there's no contradiction. There's no contradiction because, say, Buddhism, as I said earlier, I quoted the Buddha, don't follow me blindly out of faith. Follow out of analysis with the objectivity. So the objectivity has nuanced understanding. One is what is really there as the object there. What's the object there? And then number two is what's the nature from the object side? What's the nature? From the object side, there's no object. That is the objectivity. So therefore, the line which I read, emptiness of objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object. So for that, to reach to that level, the deeper understanding of this, instead of contradiction, these two are directly in in convergence between the two traditions. So where the subjective means objectively, the objectivity, what's the objectivity there, right? What is objectivity there? It is pure emptiness of objectivity. That is the objectivity. So for this, we have to really study deeper into emptiness. And luckily, Arunachal, we see that there are many geshes, Geshe Tudenketubla, and I'm sure there are many Kembos as well, Geshe-las, Kembo-las are there. I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to make use of these geshes, and you must have, not just attend 1-2 days teaching, but really go to have, lessons like classes, not like a formal teaching, more like a classes. That is extremely important. And then you study deeper. Then you realize that, wow, this is the beauty of Buddhist philosophy. And on the, I told you the paradigm shift from Newtonian physics to the quantum physics and relativity theory. Paradigm shift meaning that in the earlier times, in the old style, or the classical theory, they believe that on the object something is there, from the object something is there, and then the quantum mechanics says that from the object, independent of the subject, independent of the observer, there's nothing there's observed. This is the paradigm shift. So I also indicated the paradigm shift there. You're getting it? So therefore, to really get to this, keep in mind, at least for the time being, keep in mind that we have to understand this on two levels. One is on the cursory level, the surface level, then on the deeper level. On the surface level, these seem to be like contradiction. These two are like contradictory, but on the deeper level, it is not only the contradictory. These two are extremely compatible to each other. Thank you. The next question. Anybody?
Thank you, Genla.
Okay, Chula Kandela.
If you have question, you can write in the chat box.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kandela.
President Gishla, thank you so much for your wonderful overall presentation of science, particularly physics with the Buddhist philosophy. And that was a wonderful presentation. Now, Gishla, I would like to request you, there are so many young students here in this group. They could not physically come today because of the internet problem or some other problem, but I'm sure they will, over the period of time, they will definitely go through this presentation and they will learn so many things. But the main thing, Gishila, I would like to request you here is, there are so many new younger generations, especially in our part of the area, that they are very interested, but they do not know how to go about it. So I'd like to request Gishila in that direction, that what should be their first step towards, learning towards the Buddhist philosophy. As Gishila just briefly mentioned that Tibet House do conduct and organizes courses for Nalanda diploma courses as well as Nalanda master's courses. So I would like to request Geshila to briefly explain a little bit to the younger generations how to take the first step towards the learning this profound Buddhist philosophy. I know that there are so many students, there are so many local officers who did not get the opportunity to learn, but now they are a little sort of confused how to go about it. So I would like to request Keshila to give a few tips or few suggestions that how should they really go about it.
Thank you so much, Chula Kandela. Thank you so much. And in fact, the one thing that I really feel inspired is that, I told you right from the beginning that Gishi Truden Kedula, when he sent the first invitation, then the secretary told me that, oh, there's an invitation from Arunachal. And I said, who's that? To give a talk on science. And, oh, who's that? I asked, who's that? Who's that person? I said that maybe he knows you so well or you know him so well. I said, who's that? Gishi Truden Kedula. I said, I don't know, but he's so precious. This is so precious. I don't know him. But then this request is so precious because he is taking the initiative. So likewise, Chola Kandela, you are taking the initiative. That there are so many people there. They need, some direction. I fully agree with you. And meanwhile, before I say any comment on this, I wholeheartedly thank Gishi Tudenkitubla, Ken Sangyala, and then the Tuda Omala helping, two of you and your other friends, that you are taking this initiative. That is so important, that there should be people locally there to take the initiative. And Chola Kandela, you took the initiative. to to take me to Itanagar Gomba, twice with all your busy schedule yourself, and then you paid all the travel expenses yourself. You bore all the expenses yourself to that this be made accessible to the common people. So I really appreciate when I see people like you, Gishi to the Kendrubla, the Chola to the Kandela, Gesangela, and then to the Umala, helping from Europe. So and then the young people, what is that? The Mindu Siring, when we see the such people taking the initiative, that is so precious. The first thing that what I would say is that there must be locally there are people taking initiative. That is so precious, number one. Then alongside, and then the like they say the Chola Kandela, Tuden Kandela himself, who is doing the Nalanda Master's course from Tibet House. And then we have now Geshe Tuden Kadrula, say the he feels a need that this the Arunachal the people who have modern education, the government services, students, colleges, and so forth, they must be exposed to the one's own culture, which is so precious. So in this connection, what I would say is that if there is a possibility, okay, that it can be done in two ways. One is, yes, that's very true. In fact, the usually in the already existent the Buddhist the culture places like Arunachal, Sikkim, Tibetans, Chinese, and so forth, say they have tremendous devotion faith, and this faith, then this faith only sees some blessings, and then this faith in a way, it is like a deterrent factor for one to learn deeper into the Buddhist philosophy. This is what is happening. So therefore now, like the Geshe Tudem, Kedubla, and Gensangela, and then Chola Kandela, and others. So from locally, there must be people who are exposed to the deeper Buddhist philosophy, and then that should be like the main the center. You should be the center of the Buddhist studies in your local place. Number one. Then the next one is that say the Tibet House. We offer very systematic studies on two levels. One is the short term, which is just 1.5 years course. We call it Nalanda diploma course. And there, if anybody who studies this, they study the Buddhist philosophy in a very systematic way. That later on, you listen to any teachings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you will get minimum like 60-70% very easily. You'll understand what His Holiness is teaching, and you'll feel such a joy and the benefit of this incredibly precious teachings coming from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And then we have the other one, which is Nalanda Master's course. After taking one year course of the Nalanda Diploma course, then if the person feels that yes, now I get a flavor of what our culture is, the Buddhist culture is. Once you get a flavor of this, then you like to go deeper into this. And for that, we have again the access for the 4 years course, which we call as the Nalanda Master's course, launched by His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 2016 here in Tiagra Stadium in Delhi. So this course, what are the subjects, the topics covered? What are the texts covered there? In this course is almost like 90% of what is covered in the monastic universities, Sera, Tebung, Ganden. Almost 90% of their cover. Of course, what we study in 4 years and what is studied in Sera, Tebung, Ganden for 20 years or 16 years, 20 years. Of course, we cannot compare the two. At least even the lay audience, ordinary people who do not otherwise have time for 24 hours, 24/7 time in the Buddhist studies, who do not have this, still they can have access to what the Nalanda the studies is. In what way we can translate this into a day-to-day life, so that you will, as you turn out to be age 40, 50, 60, okay, now I can see the meaning of my life, which is emptiness, emptiness, Tongbanyi, and Changjupsem, Bodhicitta. Okay, now I have a glimpse of these two. This is what I requested earlier, that we all have the capacity. Only thing is that let us not underestimate our own potentials. Why not? For the time we see that we try to indulge, we try to engage, delve into these two courses, not the diploma course, 1 year course, and then another master's course, 4 years course after the 1 year course. So that would greatly benefit. And some of the students who are graduating from this 4 years course, because their knowledge is so refined that they become the professors in the universities. They've already become professors in Buddhist, in Buddhist philosophy in the various universities, just studying 4 years in Tibet House here, and their knowledge is so adequate. Their knowledge is so competent. They become so competent in the knowledge that they now become like professors. So all of us, the finally, usually the message that I give is that be kind to yourself and be wisely kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself means let us not waste our life. Let us not waste our life. Make sure that when you reach age 30, 40, 50, okay, now I did this nightclub. Okay, it's just not really of much use. I'm already now. So when I was in my 20s, it's fine. There's so much excitement. Now I'm already 30, 40, 50. Now 30, 40, 50. If you go to nightclubs, young people will kick you out, right? Okay, now there's no fun. Now, what is really of what is really of value and meaning is, okay, the wisdom of emptiness, bodhicitta, which are taught in the Nalanda, the Nalanda teachings by the great Nalanda masters. Today, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and for example, in Arunachal, we have Geshe-las like Geshe Tuden Ketubla and so forth. So, these are things that is of real value and benefit for myself in this life and in the next lives to come. So with this, what I would say is that be kind to yourself and be wisely kind to yourself. What's the meaning of be wisely kind to yourself? Do those things which will really benefit you in this life and in the future. That is your own culture. You don't have to go to look for the treasures outside. The treasures are already within your own community's culture. That is the Nalanda tradition. So for that, if there is of course there is language barrier, so we teach everything in English. So nowadays people, they're exposed to the modern language English. And then for Nalanda diploma course, for example, say the second year, we are now doing the second year. For the second year, we're about like I say the about like 500, 600 students from all over the world. So therefore, from Arunachal as well, let us not miss the opportunity. Arunachal youngsters, you can just, if you can dedicate just 4 hours a week, 4 hours a week, not 4 hours a day, 4 hours a week. If you can dedicate 4 hours a week, that is enough for you. You can become really good in your own culture. And then this can be a legacy that you can pass down to your children, to your grandchildren, and to your family, and to all others. So that would be incredibly beneficial. So this is the what I like to comment on what Gentuten Candela said. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chula Candela.
Thank you,
Okay. Any other
Ishita,
questions?
for your
Well,
all the advices and the word of advice that we will keep in us. And I hope they have some more questions. Thank you, Gishla.
welcome, welcome. And you can contact us very easy for any of such information. You can just write to office@tibethouse.in, office@tibethouse.in. You just write to us and say, please include me in the mailing list of Tibet House. Once you're included in the mailing list of Tibet House, all the programs happening, all the new launches happening, you will come to know about them, and then you can pass the message to other people so that that we will make sure that our culture is preserved. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Maybe in the chat. Other questions in the chat?
No questions are there. Okay, I think one question is there.
Oh yeah, the question. only one question, right? Okay, that is how is how is Einstein's law equals mc square related to Buddhism or theory of relativity? Okay, so E equals mc square, E equals mc square is about the energy, mass, and the of course related to the speed of light. Speed of light, the relativity in turn, in other words, E equals mc squared. This is the summary. This is a summary of how the space and time, these two are intertwined. Space including the mass, space including mass, and the time. So these two are intertwined. And as I said earlier, I showed you one slide which talks about the relativity of space the accepted by Newton and Einstein, relativity of space and time. And then the Buddhism, you study the Nagarjuna's text, the Mula Madhyamika Karika, entering the root, fundamental wisdom of the middle way, the Mula Madhyamika Karika. So there you see the concept of the relativity of time. This is amazing. And also the Arideva's text, 400 verses. You read there, you will see the relativity of time explained there. Relative to space is relatively easy. It's easy relative to space. That was accepted at the time of Newton as well. And then the Einstein added the relativity of time. So time, space, space, both are relative. It's not only and then of course within the time, within the space, then within the space, there's the concept of all the energies, they come into play, and then the mass comes into play. Mass is just another form of the energy, and the C, the constant, the Planck's constant. So there we talk about that keep in mind that the time, while the time is relative, but the speed of light, Einstein said that is constant. Speed of light is constant. And so in this, the relativity of time and the relativity of time, how you find explained in the Buddhist philosophy, if you understand it, and first, if you understand how Einstein explains the relativity of time, so there it can be quite scary. For example, about the twins paradox, the relative time, how he explained it on the basis of this, the anecdote or the metaphor of the twins paradox. So there is quite scary. There's how we conceive as 1 year actually can be considered as one moment with respect to the frame of reference. So this is quite scary. This is exactly sometimes when I explain this to the Buddhist the philosophers and the students who study Buddhist philosophy, they said, no, it can't be true. Such things cannot be true. And of course, that is not only true according to Einstein, it can be even true from the Buddhist philosophy point of view. So which means that our understanding of the emptiness of the time, even that is that is not too complete when we are so stuck up with the conventional perception of what the reality is. Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, Jeshila, there's 2 more questions from YouTube
Yes.
in the chat.
Yes.
And then also asking that, does it mean that absence of mind? Hello?
Yes.
Does
yes.
it mean that in the absence of mind, object does not exist? This is the first question. And the second question is asked by Magdalena. What is Buddhist view on time in comparison to quantum psychics?
Okay. First, first question is, in the absence of the mind, does it mean that nothing exists? Is this question?
Object does not exist.
Okay. Object, is it true that object does not exist in the absence of time? Is this no in the absence of mind? Is this what is asked? Okay. Yeah. Good. This is I'm very happy that this person is a thinking, who's ever asked this question, the person is a thinking person. In fact, in the Buddhist philosophy, we should be thinking person. We should think. Only when we think, our number one, our faculty for thinking is going to be sharpened. With thinking, then you get the, say, the thinking information. Information out of thinking will grow within us. It's not like somebody the implanting information in us. Some are just a pure information given to you. Some are not just a pure information that should be developed within us. For example, quantum physics. You just listen to quantum physics as a very silent observer. You will not be a passive observer. You will not get anything. You will not get anything. So to really understand quantum physics, you have to think. So this thinking faculty is required. So I'm very happy. Who's ever asked this question, this person is a thinking person. First of all, let me congratulate the person who asked this question. So this question, in the absence of the mind, doesn't mean that the object is non-existent, this question. So this is a very serious question which the philosophers, they debate among themselves. For example, say in the Buddhist philosophy, say Chittamatra, modern school, of course, we have to study all these philosophical schools, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, Madhyamika. So third school, Chittamatra, they say that what we see as external, objects as external, right? Okay, let's say this flower as external. External, so this flower has two aspects. One, this is a flower. Number two, this is external flower. External meaning something external from my mind. Two, of the two, Chittamatra says that the flower exists, but the external flower doesn't exist. So the flower as external from my mind, that doesn't exist. So how does the flower exist then? Flower exists like the mirror and the reflection in the mirror. Reflection in the mirror seems to be external. When you look at the mirror, as though like you see things very far away, there's no far away there. It's just a reflection in the mirror. Reflection mirror and the mirror, these two are the same nature, same entity. But the mirror is very stable. Reflections are not stable. So the objects, they are like the reflections, and the mind is like the mirror. So the mind is very stable, where the objects are like the reflections coming in your mind. Objects do exist. They don't exist externally. This is from the point of view of Chittamatra school. Then from the Madhyamika school, it's not like the mirror example. It's like the movie and a movie projector. Movie and a movie projector behind you. So the movie is on the screen as long as the projector is operating. As long as the projector is operating, the movie is there. Although the movie is, you are not looking for the movie on the projector, you are looking for the movie on the screen. But the movie is coming from the projector. So there is the movie there outside the projector, but which is also coming from the projector. This is the Madhyamika's understanding of how the objects do exist as object, but they exist by dependence on the projector, or it depends on the mind. Okay, so the question is, then the objects, do they exist or not exist in the absence of the mind? This question, right? So to this, what I would say is that, say, object and the mind, this is not necessary that these two should be always together. This is not true. Said mind can be before the object, mind can be with the object, mind can be after the object. For example, let's say that, okay, I'm seeing the flower. My mind and the object, these two are in a loose sense. These two are together. Then I say, okay, my past life. Okay, my yesterday, when I was young, which means the object was gone, past, and the subject came later. And I say, okay, when I grow, when I'm 70, if I don't die early, when I will be 70 years old, right? So the object is 70 years old, which is not yet come, but the subject, the mind, is already there. So the mind is not necessarily the mind and the object. These to be always together. That is not necessary. So without the mind, object is not there 100%. But it doesn't mean that when the mind is not there, then the object also disappears. It's not like that. The mind can come before the object, with the object, after the object. This is a very good question. And for this, the person he's a thinking person, I would highly encourage you to continue thinking, which is so precious, and study more. Good. What is the second question, Sanjela?
Oh, Geshila, just wait. Okay, Geshila, the second question is, what is Buddhist view on the time in comparison to quantum psychics?
Quantum?
Psychics.
No, I cannot hear too well. Quantum what? Huh?
Psychics.
Quantum
P-
psychics.
yeah,
PSY? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, psychics. Okay. Okay, let's see that they. Okay, now all the audience say, some people they talk about God particle, right? Oh, now the physics have discovered God particle. Okay, this is very important. Let us not mix the technical physics and the ordinary people's understanding of physics, right? Story physics. Physics, there are two: real physics and the story physics. Story physics means ordinary people, they talk God particle and this quantum psychic and so forth. Okay, let us not mix the two things up. You're getting it? If you ask a very standard physicist about God particle, there's a discovery of God particle, they will, in fact, this is what I heard so many times. And then I met the hardcore physicists. They become so unhappy to hear these in the big conferences. They said that don't talk about these stupid things. These are the stupid people who talked about the God particles. You're getting it? Okay. So let us not mix the two things: the technical physics and the loose physics. I would say loose physics, right? Loose physics. Okay. So, for example, what is that? The Tao of Physics. Tao of Physics. There's a book there, Tao of Physics. It, it's a compares, contrast, many things. So what is, say, the quantum physics, the ones which I presented, like quantum teleportation, quantum vacuum, quantum entanglement. So these are very standard technical quantum physics. And quantum psyche, this is not really, just see who said it. Who said it? Whether it is said by very standard physicists or the physics, we call it the physics philosophers, right? Philosopher of physics. Philosopher of physics and physics, these two are different. Philosopher of physics is a little loose. The physics is a technical physics. Okay, in other words, the quantum physics does speak about time, and Buddhist philosophy does speak about time, right? Okay, quantum physics, as I said earlier, say with the quantum vacuum, from the quantum vacuum, then the whole time and space erupted. This is the explanation of the origin of the time. Whereas in the Buddhist philosophy, it's not like that. Time, there is no beginning. Quantum physics, not all quantum physicists. Within the Big Bang theorists, there are multiple views. Some say singular Big Bang, and some say multiple Big Bangs. Within the physicists, they don't agree fully. So some say multiple Big Bangs, that tally with the Buddhist philosophy, whose belief in single Big Bang, there are so many contradictions there, and it doesn't tally with the Buddhist philosophy. Whereas the psyche, the moment you bring in the psyche, observer is a technical word used by quantum physicists, but not the psyche. Psyche is not used. So even the subject, I said, this is not a word used by the quantum physicists. The psyche is not used by quantum physicists. But in a loose sense, people can speak about the quantum psyche and the the God particles and so forth. Okay, I would say that don't go too much to the loose physics, go to the technical physics. Okay, maybe the last question, if I have the next class. If you have no class, no question, then it's fine.
Then
Okay.
with this, I would like to request Sonam Darge to propose a word of thanks. Please, Sonam Darge.
Okay, thank you, Sangasala. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, yes.
Hello, sir. Okay. Sorry for all. Here's not light. Firstly, I would like to Tashi Delek and a very, very good evening to all. It gives me an immense happy to deliver the word of thanks for this beautiful online teaching session. So definitely, I want to give my word of thanks in my Tibetan language because whatever I want to say anything and whatever is the idea in me, it is a little easier for me to use my usual language. So that is all that. And during the any tamshaba sena mindo any loptemba kiwishingi chimbo kishi damdo cho any dandegi satagi dusu dene kapso any kiga ta zamindi yutu kiga mangoshila any kazanshik pendogu yembedi any 상막이 계좌달에 유튜브 날에 세워야 any pe shiragi ge any 제와 chimbo danga dine dine 이내양 기용 호랑이 운데 단에 다 투세와 준비가 들어야지 다 뒤서 나와들라니 걔는 이 타본의 투시에는 쉬어이 대단님들은 드링이 제제디 ene shibagi tingsabola gyachimo rede ene gen khurangi ene pe nasogi tone ene ngazolo pe shuji session naso dele gen la ning tabone tujishene shuyi en 대단님도 ene 드링 de ene da 고리 소종 세나민도 다 넬렌데 추기 아르나실기 나벨 현소 솔라니 신예니 다 마음벌에 다가나신이 고리 나로실래 쉬지 땅 and data and the Chinese to soil and tele kishi that the good solution I mean that music to and kishi to the future in Taiwan institution and Dijala again I would like to thank to the organizer with Miss Tuptin Wangmula. You had put immense hard work to make this online session successful. And lastly, especially my heartily gratitude and honor to all the participants who have come here and shown keen interest in this online teaching event. So your presence become more delightful and fulfilling, and I hope to see you in upcoming session too. And thank you each and everyone, and thank you.
Very much, Sonam. Well, here we come to the end of our today's session, and we would like to once again thank each and everyone for joining us and tuning us with. And Jeshila, we are looking forward to see you again. Jeshila.
Sure.
And
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeshila. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gishi. Thank you, Tubla. Thank you, Gen Sangela. Thank you, Sonam Targela. Thank you, Tubden Omala. And thank you, each and every one of the participants. Thank you so much. Thank you. Looking forward, and I'm sure that with your efforts and the Buddha Dharma, that the soul of compassion, the soul of happiness for the humanity, for all the sentient beings will thrive in Arunachal. This is my prayer. Thank you so much, Kishu. Thank you once again. Thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeshila. Stay safe. Take care.